This week, West Red Lake Gold issued a preliminary economic assessment, so an initial mine plan for our Rowan project. Let me set the scene for a minute. Rowan is about 30 kilometers away from Madsen to the northwest. The two projects are about 80 kilometers away by road because there's a red lake in the way that you need to go around, and it's a fairly large lake. On the way, you go past the Red Lake Mine Complex, which is Evolution's operations, where there are several other mills. The Rowan Project itself encompasses 3 historic mines, and at one of those historic mines, there's a small but very high-grade deposit. That deposit has 196,000 indicated ounces in rock grading 12.9 grams per ton gold, and there are another 116,000 inferred ounces at an average grade of 8.8 grams per ton gold. So it's not a large resource, but at almost 13 grams per ton gold for that larger indicated category, it absolutely has grade. And it's also designed for mining, for underground mining. It is nearly vertical, it's relatively wide, it starts at surface, and it has pretty good continuity. That kind of deposit in a mining district, Red Lake, with multiple operating mills that have excess capacity and are processing similar mineralization, it sort of calls out to be developed. So this PEA is the first step along that path. I guess it's the second step. We've already collected as a first step over 2 years of baseline environmental data, which means that we should be able to start permitting a mine at Rowan within roughly a year. Bill 5 in Ontario is a newly passed piece of legislation that looks to expedite the permitting process for projects like Madsen. And Madsen, based on similar projects in recent years, on the past version of the legislation, we would have expected to take no more than 2 years to permit. With Bill 5, there's a potential for that to be less. Okay, so what is it that we would be permitting? The mine plan that we just issued is for a mine producing about 380 tons of mineralization, grading on average 8 grams per ton as a diluted head grade a day for 5 years. Sending that rock to a local mill for processing would produce over 35,000 ounces of gold annually. The capital costs, so what it costs to get the mine up and running, are relatively low at $70 million. And they're low thanks to not needing to build a mill or a tailings facility. That's the benefit of a toll milling operation. All-in sustaining costs to produce the gold once the mine is built are expected to average US $1,408 per ounce. Now, low capex, 70 million Canadian, plus fairly low all-in sustaining costs in a strong gold environment mean that the plan generates a very strong internal rate of return of 42%, and that's after tax and discounted. That's based on a gold price of US $2,500. Okay, so Rowan with this PEA now carries an after-tax net present value of $125 million at that US $2,500 gold price. Using a gold price 30% higher of US $3,250 per ounce increases the project's value to $239 million and boosts the internal rate of return to 82%. That's at fairly close to current gold pricing. So $70 million to build something like that, which at current gold pricing would generate an over 80% internal rate of return. That's what I mean by this deposit sort of asks to be mined. It's also important, I want to note, that we see a lot of potential upside at Rowan. There's, for instance, a parallel vein right close to the veins that are targeted in this mine plan that is part of the resource, but that's largely defined by historic drilling. And in that the operators of that historic drilling only assayed the parts of the drill core that had obvious veining in them. When we, as West Red Lake, drilled at Rowan in 2023, we demonstrated that mineralization generally persists outside of those obvious veins into the wall rock. Such mineralization, maybe call it halo mineralization, which is, of course, now not in the resource estimate because it wasn't sampled, has the potential to pull parts of that parallel vein into the mine plan. Given that the Rowan mine generated such strong economics with a very modest resource, adding more high grade to the count could have some nice economic benefit. There's also a great opportunity to grow the deposit at depth, since it's only been delineated down to about 400 meters and returns some of its best results from the bottom of the current deposit. And there are several good targets on the wider Rowan property, one just along strike to the east and others farther along the trend that certainly deserve attention. So suffice to say, we think there's good opportunity that we will be able to have more resource defined and up to snuff in terms of those areas with the historic drilling before we upgrade the mine plan to a pre-feasibility study, which is something that we plan to do in about a year. Over the last 2 years, we've certainly put the vast majority of our attention into the Madsen Mine. But Rowan is a great deposit, and this PEA proves that it deserves to be advanced towards development. We're glad to have demonstrated its value at this stage, and we look forward to seeing what additional value we can uncover as we take Rowan to the next stage.